I really believe that dating is for the purpose of investigation. Why else are you doing it? What's up, breathing people? Welcome back. Today we're talking about red flags in dating. This is something I really wish somebody talked to me about when I started dating. But back then, it just wasn't in the lexicon. Everybody wanted to talk about what not to do, which is fine on principle, but I needed help with the person sitting across from me to identify if there's something in them that will make me put on the brakes and say, let's slow down. Maybe this is something that I need to pay attention to, and maybe I need to cut off this relationship entirely. I wish I had that ability. I wish I had those tactics when I went into the relationships, but no one talked to me about it. So that's why we're here today. We're gonna talk about 4 red flags that we've really dialed back and dialed in to the simplest form so that they're easy for you to remember when you're in a relationship. So before that, I just wanted to start off with some scripture because I think sometimes the way that we combat red flags is truth. Because that's ultimately what we're trying to identify in a dating relationship. I really believe that dating is for the purpose of investigation. Why else are you doing it? Especially for the purpose of marriage. You're gonna marry this somebody, but you haven't done thorough investigation into their life? Nah, we really want to dig in and know the truth about that person. And I'm gonna bring in this thing called the Bible. And the reason I wanna bring it in is because it is so good in identifying the truth about the things that we're actually looking for in a dating relationship. And I bet you can answer that right now. The thing we're all looking for is love. So if you know the truth about love, then you can identify red flags because they will be the opposite of love. So this is 1 Corinthians chapter 13. You may know this. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. And when I became a man or a woman, I gave up my childish ways. For now we see in the mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide. These 3, but the greatest of these is love. So, red flag number 1, anger. Now, anger in and of itself is not a bad emotion. I don't believe any emotion is bad inherently. I believe God created emotion and I believe that He wants us to feel it fully. But there are things to look out for in a relationship that shift anger from being mild frustration, to put it mildly, to pointed and hurtful. So when you see a shift in the anger that someone's displaying, we're all gonna get frustrated. We're all gonna get angry at one point or another in a relationship. You could be driving down the road with that person and someone cuts them off and they get angry. And they might be justified because they're protective. They really want to protect you, so they're angry at that person that almost hurt you. That's different when that person is making remarks to you or to people around them that is hurtful. And that's something to really watch out for in a relationship because that can develop into things that are much worse than hurtful words.
Yeah, what we want to avoid is anger that turns into abuse.
Yeah.
That can look like verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. We know that unchecked anger will lead to that. So something that you want to look out for is the person that you're dating, did they come from a home where abuse was happening in the home?
Yep.
If that is the case, they have a higher risk of being an abusive person, as well as being somebody who will be abused. If you know there was abuse in their family, you need to slow down and find out more if you see them targeting their anger at you to hurt you, because that is probably gonna lead to abuse. One other thing to keep in mind for yourself, if you have been in an abusive family, you also want to be aware of that, because you are at a higher chance of getting into a relationship with somebody who might abuse you, because you don't have a healthy understanding of what love is and how you should be respected. So you will want to get counseling on that, get help with that, be aware of that, so that you can pick somebody who respects you and values you.
That's what's most important in any dating relationship. You're valuable. It just said it in that verse that God knows you, which means that you are valuable as a human being. Any anger that's directed to hurt you, it's not worth it. So get out.
Yep. Red flag number 2 is pride. Okay? So when we talk about anger and how that's an emotion, pride is not an emotion.
No.
Pride is pride. And that's when somebody thinks that they are better than you and that they know better than you. If you see that in the person that you're dating, that is a red flag. It could look like being dismissive of your desires, your opinions, your thoughts, your wants. If the person that you're dating always takes charge and doesn't let you choose anything because they just think that you're wrong and they're right, that is a red flag. That is arrogance. That's pride. And that is going to hurt you now, and it's gonna hurt you definitely if you marry that person. Marriage is supposed to be a union where you grow together, you refine each other, you enjoy each other, you go on a journey together. If you go on a journey with someone who's prideful, it's just what they think.
Right.
And when you confront them, they're not going to be wrong, or they're not going to admit that they're wrong. So I would challenge you, if you notice that now, that you are dating a prideful person, point it out to them. See what happens.
Yeah, their reaction is going to say a lot about what is inside of them. Is it pride? Is it just something where they just have bad habits? You need to identify those things. Investigate. That's why you're dating.
Yeah. If they're unable to admit that they're wrong every time you point it out, that's pride.
All right, so red flag number 3, control. Sometimes we overlook this one because we can put a lot of different labels on control, like being overly protective, or I don't know, fill in the blank. I'm sure you've been in relationships where there just was a little too much. That's control, ultimately. It's where the other person wants to dictate your actions and wants to dictate your speech, dictate your relationships. One thing that I've really learned from just my own relationships and watching people around me is that there are many times where a person, and it could stem from insecurity, could stem from a lot of different things, but they will, in order to control the person they're in relationship with, they will dictate the people that person is allowed to be with on any point in time. Why do you hang out with those friends? I don't really like them. You know, why do you keep always having to go back to your family every Monday? Why is that a thing? Why can't we hang out together? Why can't we just be together? Why can't? And what you'll notice is a pattern of that person trying to draw you out of all of your other relationships into just a relationship with them. Now, that doesn't usually dictate who they're allowed to be with and who they're allowed to see and who they're allowed to be in relationship with. It's usually just one-sided. And you need to be aware of that so that you don't fall into that trap. That person is trying to control you. Don't let them.
This could look like fear, shame, or blame. Those are my 3 words. If they are making you afraid and almost like threatening you to make you do what they want, that is a red flag. That is controlling. If they are making you feel ashamed or like you're stupid or you're less than, in order to control you, big red flag. Blame. If they blame you for things in order to make you do what they want next, like you were sick last week and I couldn't do this or whatever it is, they make you feel bad so that they can go do what they want, that's a major red flag. They're not valuing your uniqueness and who you are and who you were created to be, and they're trying to make you what they want. So they don't actually want a relationship with you, they want to use you.
Yeah. And this flows right into number 4. Red flag is selfish. If that person only cares about them, they're selfish. And that is not a relationship anymore. That is a one-sided dictatorship. A relationship involves two people. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't come into relationships with interests and opinions and thoughts and desires. I want you to have that. But if that person is only going to have their way or it's the highway, that's a red flag that you need to be aware of. It's okay for that person to desire that thing, but if they can't accept your input when you desire to do something different, that person isn't worth staying with.
And a good way to identify that is to get with this person in groups. Whether it's with their family, their friends, or your family, your friends, a group that you're a part of, your church. You want to see how do they act with other people, because they might have an infatuation with you. I'm not going to call it love because love is true. So they might have a desire for you. And so because they desire you, they're not going to be selfish with you, but they will eventually be selfish with you. So you need to look at their other relationships. How do they treat their friends? How do they treat their family? How do they treat acquaintances in the groups that you're a part of? How do they treat the waitress? How do they treat people they meet at the store? Are they selfish? Are they unkind? That's going to show you their heart and how they will eventually treat you when that infatuation with you fades.
One thing that's not really original to me, I heard a pastor talk about it, is if that person is pushing you to do things that you have already specified you don't want to do in the relationship, that person is selfish and they don't fear God. Because God has made it clear that He loves you. And God has made it clear that you're valuable. And if that person doesn't care about your desires in the relationship, they don't fear God and they don't love you. That's just something to keep in mind. Your desires in the relationship are valuable. And if that person doesn't respect them, then they are selfish and that they're not worth dating.
Hey, if you want to hear us talk about this same topic in a long form conversation, you can check out our podcast. The link is in the description below.